back. Welcome back to my island, my autism. Um, Today's video is going to be the story of what happened with my former job and why I have a new job. Now, I've gone through, multiple jobs in my life. Most people do. Um, However, I really liked that company before, but what ended up happening actually spawned why I started doing videos again, and I'm ready to talk about it. So, before we get going, let's go ahead and hit that subscribe button if you haven't, and go ahead and click the notification bell as well. And remember, share it with your friends. So anyway, let's get into this. So I worked for a company in the entertainment industry, and I loved it. I was a service desk analyst, so I work with computers and their software and helping the users do what they need to do. No, I did not help out celebrities. People ask me that all the time. That wasn't what I did. I helped out the people who worked for the celebrities, or, I helped them out. It was great, and I loved the company. The pay was great. The benefits were great. All good things. I could see myself growing with the company and staying there for a few years. And I ended up staying for 2 years. But what ended up happening was I didn't disclose at all that I had been diagnosed with autism. And you don't have to, just so you know. You don't have to disclose it. But I didn't tell anybody. It wasn't until about 6 months in that I did finally disclose to my direct boss that I had been diagnosed with autism, and it came up kind of naturally. Like, we were in a 6 month review, and he was telling me how good I was doing, where I need to improve and stuff like that. And he said to me that, he didn't think that he was a good boss. And I explained, no, you're a great boss. You're so direct, because he is. It's very direct. You know that when he says it, that's what he means, and it's no like runaround. And it was super easy to work for him being somebody with autism, because there was no reading between the lines. There was no guesswork. There was none of that. What he said is what he wanted, and he was just go do it. And that's pretty much how it was. So I explained to him, no, for these reasons I like that, and it works because I have autism, and yeah, yeah, yeah. So he said I didn't have to tell him that. He thanked me for telling him. And I just kind of moved on. I still hadn't told HR. By this time, I was no longer seeing my therapist. That is the therapist who actually diagnosed me. And I didn't have an official diagnosis. So time went on, and little by little, even from when I first started, he would do these things where he would say, like, hurry up, I'm getting older. He goes, I'm not. He goes, I'm getting older. Like, if I didn't work at his fast pace, like, it wasn't like I wasn't working at a good pace. It's just he's super fast. And if I have to take a moment, which is sometimes a symptom of autism, that you got to think about what you're trying to say specifically. If I was taking too long to get to the point or articulate what I was trying to say, or sometimes understand something that he particularly wanted me to do, he would say things like that. It's like, I'm getting older, or he would go, yawn. And he would, say my name and be like, hurry up, hurry up, hurry up. And I kind of just dealt with it. These were things, they weren't super bad. So I dealt with it. I figured, yeah, he probably shouldn't do that. But I mean, our team was so small. It was like a team of 2 people plus him. So, and we worked really well. And I didn't want to like grease the wheels. I didn't want to do anything. So I just let it be. Um, Year went on of this, and it got a little bit worse, but it was still manageable. Now, I hadn't mentioned any of this to anybody. And anytime anybody asked me about my job, I was like, oh, I love my job. And I love my boss, and everything is good. And because it bothered me, but it didn't think, but I felt like it wasn't something I should complain about because I had such a good job and I was making money and I was, you know, living on my own, which I've been doing for a while, but like I was really like doing it. I was making waves. I had bought a new car, brand new, off the lot. I was doing the life. I was living a good life. So this one little thing shouldn't have been a big deal. It was, and we'll get to that. So at one point in time, uh, things started to get a little bit worse. He was more stressed out from pressure at work and home. And I, the things he started to say became more often. And he would say I was asking too many questions when I had been working on not asking so many questions, but the questions that I were asking were honest, actual questions to actually do the job. Like they had never come up before, and it's not something you can really research because it's particular to the company and how the company works and how they want their procedures to be done. So you can't just go Google it. Um, so the things he was saying was just becoming more stressed out because, and they were becoming more rude and mean uh, because he was stressed. And I chalked it up to he's stressed, it's fine. But because I started getting more stressed, I started not wanting to go to work as much. And I was already working in a part of the office where there was a lot of foot traffic, and that's distracting to me. I couldn't stay focused, and because where I was before was actually really quiet, and I had to move, and it was not ideal. So I started going back to my therapist because I knew that if I wanted to go to HR and disclose that I had autism so I could get accommodations, I would have to get an official diagnosis. So I did that. I went back and I got an official diagnosis, and um, that's the whole video that I mentioned before. It was actually one of the first ones I did about how I really hated that diagnosis thing. Well, the test. But I got that, and then I was able to get accommodations. I was able to go to my HR, who then sent me to the honcho ladies for and I ended up getting a really good accommodation to where I was permanently moved to a quieter space, and I was allowed to have 3 days off that didn't come out of my PTO days, a quarter to just take off if I started to get overwhelmed, because I do. With the particular job that I had, I am constantly talking to people, and that is just such a drain on me. It's not that I don't like it. I do. I like helping people. I like the job field that I'm in, but that means that I have to talk to people all the time. And when I have to talk to people all the time, then I have to mentally say a whole bunch of things to myself of be nice and don't say this, don't do that, and if you gotta say it this way and all this other stuff, and my head is already spinning. And for someone with autism, that can be really, really hard. So I would go home and I'd be tired. I get to sit down all day, but I would tire because I'm mentally drained. So me moving helped a lot, and I didn't have all those people coming, that foot traffic, so I could really focus on my job, and my performance started to get better. However, um, things with my boss did not go great. Uh, so what ended up happening was the worst of it. And it's the first time I even mentioned to my mother what was going on, because by this time I still had not told my therapist. Um, so in October of last year, um, actually it was actually in September. So in September of last year, I had my accommodations in order and everything like that. And I said, well, I'm going to just wait until the next quarter to use some of my days. I can make it for the rest of this quarter. But then I had an interaction with my boss. And not only had my boss been saying things that I take too long and stuff like that, but he had started to imply that I didn't know what I was doing. That I, in a job that I had been doing for just them for over a year and a half, that I didn't know what I was doing. But I've also been in this field for over 6 years and longer if you count like the little things that I've done. So like 10 years. And he says, "Oh, I don't think you know what you just mimic." He would say, "You just mimic what so and so says," and which was the other employee who had been there longer. And he does know more than I do. I'm not going to say that he did not. He knew way more than I do. But what I was talking about, I know what I was talking about. And sometimes I may not know a technical term, or I'm trying to think of that technical term, which he doesn't like because it takes too long. So that's what was happening. So we had an incident where I was pretty darn positive I knew what was causing the issue. There was a group that was having an internet issue, and I was pretty sure that it wasn't our company's issue, it was the internet provider's issue. So after talking to the customer, I went and I was about to go to lunch, and I went and I talked to my boss, who was stressed out, and I just wanted to say, "Hey, I talked to them. I see that you have the ticket." He stopped me right there and he goes, "I already know what the issue is." Just like that. And I said, "Oh, okay." Because I wanted to know if I was sure, like I was right. I said, "Well, what do you think it is?" And he goes, "Oh, it's just an ISP issue." And I said, "Oh, okay, that's what I thought too." And he goes, "Oh, really? An ISP issue? Do you know what ISP is?" And I just looked at him and I was like, did he really just ISP is internet service provider, by the way, which is the internet company, like I thought. So I was taken aback that he even one said that to me and two said it in that manner. Like he literally called me out and was like, "I'm just mimicking again and I'm saying that I don't know what I know." And so I said, "Yeah, internet service provider." And I actually said to him, I said, "Did you really think that I didn't know what ISP was?" And he goes, he literally did this. He was on his desk and he put his hands in his head and went, "Well, sometimes I just don't know." And I said, "Okay, I'm going to lunch." And I walked away. And I called my mom and I proceeded to have a meltdown. I didn't even eat lunch. I had a meltdown where I was questioning everything. I was questioning if I had done the right thing by moving to Nashville from Georgia because I was stable in Georgia. I wasn't doing great. I mean, I was getting great, but I was questioning so many things. I was questioning if I should go back home. I was questioning if I should actually start going to ABA therapy. I was questioning so much because of how I was being treated. I was so angry. I was so upset. I was so sad. I was so hurt that I was questioning if I should even be in Nashville. Maybe I should just move home. And guys, I almost did. I almost gave up and moved back to Alabama to live with my mother. I was so, I almost gave up. And so the next day I got up and I got dressed and I got to the door and I had another meltdown. I couldn't get out the door. I have agoraphobia. And every day I have to say, like as you guys might not notice it because I do go out and I do stuff, but I would love to just stay at home and never go anywhere. So it's a constant battle with me to just like go out, but it gets worse when I'm stressed and I'm upset and certain things are not right in my world. So I couldn't leave. And so I just sent an email to my boss and to HR and said, "I'm taking my 3 days." And I did. And then I went back to work and I felt better. And I was like, okay, I'm not going to give up. Everything's going to be good. And another month goes by and things get worse until it gets to the point of where the last interaction with my boss was the worst one. And he he I had a ticket that I was not able to do. I could not perform the task because I didn't have the proper permissions to perform the task. My associate did. So I assigned the ticket to my associate. I emailed my associate that I had sent them the ticket. And I even spoke to the associate and said, "Hey, they need this, this, and this. I can't do that." And he was like, "Okay, I'll get to it." And I forgot about it because it's not my task anymore. I've passed off the task properly, as I've been told to do, to my associate. So a week later, another ticket comes in from the same person saying that it hasn't been done yet. And I was like, okay, cool. So in this instance, I was like, okay, I'm just going to go tell my associate that since it's not done, I'm going to have our other part of our company do it. Because we have other people that are not just in Nashville, they're in LA. And I was going to have them do it. But I wanted to tell my associate, hey, I'm going to do this so it can go ahead and get done. Sorry, you heard my phone. And it not be a big deal. So I go to tell my associate this, and I walk past my boss's office and to look at the office of my associate, and I don't see him, so I turn to walk back. And I walk back past my boss's office, and my boss's his door was closed, so I didn't even want to bother him. I was just going to go ahead and do it. I was just going to go ahead, assign the ticket to another group so that I can get it done, and just email my associate. That was what my plan was. But my boss stopped me. He saw me walk by. He told me to come here, so I went. And then I saw my associate, and so my boss is like, what are you doing?" And I said, "Oh, well, I was looking for him because," and he goes, "Well, why?" And I said, this is literally how he was to me, like from the start. It wasn't like, "Hey, what are you doing? Like, how are you?" It wasn't calm. It was like, he goes, "Why?" And so I went to explain, "Oh, well, there was this ticket that he has to do, but and his response before I could even finish my statement, which he did ask me what I was doing and why, he goes, "Well, did you ask anybody else?" Just like that. Actually, with the head turn, he goes, and I said, "Well," he goes, "Did you ask anybody else?" "I didn't ask you." "Well," he goes, "Did you ask anybody else? Did you ask anybody else?" He won't even let me reply. And this is the first time that my associate's seeing this, so he's actually kind of yelling this at me. Did I ask anybody else when I had a plan to do it because this is the way they had told me to do it in the past? So I was just like, he goes, "If you didn't ask anybody else," and I said, "Well, no." And he goes, "Well, then you need to ask somebody else." So I looked at my associate and I looked back at him and I walked out and I was on the verge of tears. So, and here's the thing, the associate was actually seeing how hostile my boss was being towards me, that he was trying to get him to calm down, be like, "Whoa, whoa." He was saying this. So you know what? I just left. So I go back to my corner office in the, where I sit, and my associate follows me, and he goes, "Hey, hey, don't worry about it. I'll do it." He goes, "I'm sorry, I forgot." And I just looked at him and I said, "That man's going to make me quit." And my associate was like, "No, no." And I'm like, "You saw what he did, and that's not the first time." He goes, "What?" So he didn't even know how I was feeling because I didn't tell anybody. So I told him the previous story about where he asked me if I knew what an ISP with the hands and everything like that. And he goes, "He did?" And I said, "Yeah, he did." And I said, "He's going to make me quit. I love this company, but I don't want to work for him. Like, how I don't want to work for him." And so my associate is like, "No, don't quit." And this was the first time, because I was so upset, that I went to HR. And I just word vomited all of the stuff that had been happening in like over a year to HR because I was so distraught. And the reason why I hadn't gone to HR sooner was because my boss had an actual issue with HR and was like, don't be going behind, da 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 da. They're just trying to, and all this other stuff. Like he had a serious issue with the way that HR was trying to make things, and he was very vocal about it. So I was like, well, I don't want to like betray my boss, so I'm not gonna go to HR about. It was bad. So word vomited all of this, and I said the word, I told her, I was like, I don't know how I'm going to work, because if there was an issue in any other department in the company, then they would just move that person to be work under somebody else. For me, it would be, I would have to transfer to New York or LA or London. And that wasn't going to happen, to work under a different boss in the same setting. And so I was just like, you know what? It's fine. I just need to just take, I'm just gonna, it's like, can I go home? Can I just go home today? And I said, I don't even want to tell him that I'm going home. Just, can I go home? She's like, yeah. She goes, but we need to look into this. I'm like, I don't want anybody to look into this. It's fine. I'm just upset. It's fine. But she's HR, and it wasn't fine. And what I did not understand at the time, which I started to learn afterwards by ways of my friends explaining things to me and my mother, was that they had to do something. They had to investigate, because what I was saying was completely and totally not fair, and it was wrong. Not only would it be wrong to a normal employee, it was extra wrong because he knew that I was autistic, and some of the stuff that he was saying was even worse because I have autism. Thus, those things not allowing me to explain, or not letting me ask my questions, or saying things like that. And here in the States, if anybody's watching in not another state, or in another country, um, I'm a protected class. And thus, if they don't look into the situation, then technically I could sue, which I never even thought of that. That wasn't a thing that was in my mind. I am not that type of person. So I wasn't even thinking about it. But because I had finally said something, even though I said don't do anything, they were obligated to do something. So they started an investigation. And during the first week or two of this investigation, I was sent home with pay. And then as I was still going to see my therapist and everything, it got worse. My anxiety was getting worse, because now I'm worried about the investigation, because I really did like my boss. My boss pushed, he wasn't that, that was the, like, if you took that little part away, my boss was wonderful, for all the reasons that I mentioned before, that he was so direct, he's kind and caring, and does care about his employees and all this other stuff. And he made me a better, he actually is the reason why I did so well in my interview for my current job, because he brought that out of me. He brought a different type of person out of me. I am super shy, and I don't stand up for myself, and all this other blah 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 blah, yada yada yada. And he got me to own own me. He got me to have ownership, and be like, you know what you're doing, which was so confusing, because he would tell me, I know you know what you're doing, but then this whole thing was, he was questioning if I knew what I was doing. That's why I was having this back and forth conundrum. So I didn't want him to get fired. I knew a little bit about his home situation, and that was bothering me, and it just was a whole big deal. And I didn't want to have to talk to some investigation lady, and my agoraphobia got even worse. Like, oh my gosh, I didn't even want to go see my therapist at one point in time. That is how bad it got, is that things that I actually wanted to do, I was having trouble leaving the house. So in this time period, I am now not working. It wasn't just 2 weeks. It turned into 2 months, to where I was on FMLA, and I was not working. I was home for 2 months trying to work through this huge thing. And I started looking for a job, because I still didn't know the results of the investigation. The holiday was coming up. So I went back to work for a week at the end of December, right before our holiday break from work. And I got a job offer. And I really thought about it, because when I did go back for that 1 week. My boss was oh so nice to me, and oh so he was so happy I was back. But the investigation wasn't over. But he was very happy that I was back, and I just I wasn't. I could tell that I knew he had been talked to a couple of times, and so I knew that he had put two and two together with me being gone and him being talked to, that it was me. So he was super, super nice because he did miss me. Like, they were down a person, man. That team actually needs like three people on it, and there was only two doing this job. So with one gone, whoo, it was bad. So over the holiday break, I got a really good job offer for a new company, and I took it. And I started that the first week of January, and I freaking love it. It's awesome. I actually, instead of even going through a whole song and dance in the interview process, I actually said that I had autism, and it wasn't because I wanted to like be like, oh, I have autism and like hurt my chances of getting a job. It actually was natural that it happened. It was a question. I was asked a particular question about overcoming something, and I decided just to be completely and totally honest and say, well, and it was like one of my things that I've overcome is because of my autism and the way that I view things, and so I just explained that, and apparently they liked it. So, but when I got hired for the new job, like I went ahead and disclosed on the little form where it says like, do you have a disability? And autism is literally one of them. So I disclosed that. So it's like HR knew right off the bat. I didn't tell my bosses right away. It just kind of came up in conversation as we were going through things. Like I don't even think all of them really know. They don't all know, but it doesn't matter if they don't know because it's such a better environment. I'm still doing the same job, but I'm doing more. I have more responsibilities and it's less people facing. The more I get less people facing and less talking to customers, it's great, but I still get to help the customers. So this is great too. It's just awesome. But that's all of that led up to the only reason I left and sought out this new job is because of what happened at the other job. And I just want to, I've been in these groups, these autism groups online for females with Asperger's and just Asperger's and everybody's all on different areas of the spectrum, and a lot of stuff comes up about, working at jobs, and some people don't work, but the people who do work, they have issues. They have like, well, my boss did this or my boss did that, or this happened at work and this happened at work, and I totally get it. It is hard to hold down a job for anybody. Like for just neurotypical people, jobs can be stressful. For people with who have autism, that are on the autism spectrum, it is so hard, especially when it's people facing, like retail or food industry, or even when I'm doing with IT. If I'm dealing with people, it's hard. And sometimes we just need our bosses not to be crazy on us. So that's my story. I know I talked for a bit, but I wanted to share that I was really low. I was at a very low point in those months to where I wanted to give up and just go home and be with my mother and my grandmother. And I mean, it's not like I wouldn't get a job. I would have gotten some job. I would have paid money. Like, I would have still worked, but I would have gotten a job that was so less than what it is now. I wouldn't be at my full potential. I wouldn't be living on my own. I was willing to give up the freedom that I had worked for to move back in with my mother because I was feeling so defeated by the neurotypical world. And I learned that I don't see the signs of my own huge meltdowns coming. And so that's something that I am working with my therapist. I have not stopped seeing her since. I don't see her as often, but I still see her. So we're working on how to stand up for myself because it's really hard. It's really hard for me to turn around and look at that person who is wronging me and be like, you're wronging me. I can say it and I can practice it and say it into a camera. I can say it to a mirror. I can say it all day long. I can repeat it back to my mother. I can repeat it back to my therapist. I can repeat it back to my friends who are helping me. But when it comes to the person who is actually doing me a disservice and is actually treating me badly, it is really hard for me to look that person in the face and be like, you are treating me poorly. So I'm working on that. So I did learn a lot. I learned that I need to stand up for myself, and I learned that I need to tell my, even if I don't tell my mother, I need to tell my therapist about certain things that are happening. Like, I need to be fully truthful about what's going on, because if I had not, one, stopped seeing my therapist, and two, talked to her about what was actually happening, most likely she would have been able to see this meltdown coming and helped me before it got to the point to where I didn't want to leave the house, to where my agoraphobia was terrible, to where I wanted to move home and everything. Like, I was in such a dark place. Um, so yeah, for anyone else that's out there, even if you don't have autism, share your stories down in the comments. I love when people like message me directly. It's really, really nice, but let's put them in the comments so we can help each other. Especially like if, for someone else who's struggling, like, you never know. Something that you say may help them, or your experience and how it was dealt with may help that other person. So if you just tell me, then only I know. But yeah, comment below, share your stories. If you want me to have a specific topic for the next video, comment below. And remember, share, like, subscribe, click the notification bell, and always, always, always stay unique.